Hi, thank you for joining me today. I'm John Oldham, founder of SwitchSafe. I was a top producer at Thrivent, New York Life, and MetLife prior to becoming an independent advisor about 10 years ago. I created this software to fill my need in the field, and now I'm sharing this with you. I want your firm to experience huge growth in 2018, but that doesn't happen doing the same old thing the same old way. During these next 5 minutes, I'm going to share with you a process that has helped me sell millions of dollars worth of annuities, mutual funds, and fee-based accounts year after year. It's a process that can easily be used by brand new reps to top producing veterans in the field. Let's dive in. The first step to huge growth is to change your thinking. No huge growth can happen doing the same old thing the same old way. There have been so many books written on the subject, but a couple of my favorites are the Blue Ocean Strategy and the Blue Ocean Shift. If you're not familiar with the concept, here's what it means. The Red Ocean is full of blood. The war is fought between the competitors in those waters. It's a brutal world. Sound familiar to anyone in the financial services industry? However, the Blue Ocean is full of clean water and no blood. Those waters have very little competition and are dominated by firms doing things a different way. Think of Uber, Amazon, Airbnb. The Blue Ocean Shift has specific case studies of businesses adopting strategies and seeing huge results. I'd encourage you to check them out. Step 2 is you need to have a story. Stories are what creates bonds and memories. People have a hard time remembering facts, but they remember emotions, and emotions are created through stories. My top story for 2018, and feel free to share this, is after a run like this in the stock market, and now some recent volatility, do you need a plan to deal with it? Clearly, this run isn't going to continue forever. What are you going to do about it? You know, almost everybody has financial stuff, but nobody has a plan. Here at SwitchSafe, we call this process flipping the switch. If you can effectively flip the switch in a prospect's mind, you're well on your way to winning huge amounts of new business. However, flipping the switch must happen early on in the sales process. People make the decision whether they're going to do business with you on the first meeting, and it is hardly ever about specific products. It's about demonstrating knowledge and ability to solve their problem, and this problem they identify in their own mind through your story. Our AUM process has been used to gain hundreds of millions of dollars in new business. Here's what it's about. First, you need to add value. We do this by going through their financial stuff for them. We offer to pull up the facts of each of those pieces of stuff and show them what they really are like under the hood. From there, you help to create understanding of the true expenses of the products and how they work. Our database has over 40,000 products that come up at a click of a button. If you can do a quick Google type search, you can use our system. As you can see, it has variable annuities, index annuities, mutual funds, ETFs, and alternative investments, all in one database, all easily compared to one another. There is no other database like this on earth. From there, once the prospect understands their stuff a little better, it's time for you to work your magic. You use your talents to make a compelling case for your services. It is really that simple, and all this happens within 10 to 15 minutes on the first meeting. At this point, the clients can make a reasonable decision on whether you are a solution to the problem they created for themselves in their mind. No more dragging out a series of meetings only to find out in the end that there was no way they were going to do business with you anyway. Some are going to say yes, some will say no, but this process eliminates a lot of wasted time and meaningless case prep only to find out that there was no way they were going to do business with you anyway. Flip their switch on the first meeting and you are golden. But you can only do this if you have the data you need at your fingertips. You can't get buy-in like this if you have to go back to your office and send off a request to the home office to get an analysis done for you. If you have to take all their financial stuff back to the office to get them some basic answers to the problem that they have created in their minds, you lose all momentum. This is where SwitchSafe comes in. 40,000 products information and a direct link to the prospectus at your fingertips. And our product list goes back to old products that were issued up to 20 years ago. So you take the time and pull up a couple of their pieces of their financial stuff in the system. You're able to show them the quick down and dirty facts about the product and all the expenses and fees that are buried in the product. Say for instance you pull up one of their mutual funds and a variable annuity that they purchased 7 years ago. You ask Mr. Jones, "Hey, Mr. Jones, that variable annuity that you bought from Jackson, how much do they charge you to manage that each year?" Of course, the client never knows those type of answers. "I don't know, John. I don't see them taking out of my statement ever. I think it's about 1% a year or something." "Well, that could be Mr. Jones. Let's pull it up here and take a quick look." You type in the name of the product into the system, you run the comparison. Well, Mr. Jones, in this product there are several fees, and you go down the list. It looks like you're paying somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 or 4% per year with all your riders. You should literally see the looks on their faces. So seeing as you have a $500,000 in that annuity, you're paying somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 a year in fees just in that product. You don't need to say anything more. Just let it ride. You have shown them how they work under the hood and the costs associated with them. So here's where you really flip the switch in most cases. Keep in mind the clients already think of how much more they're paying than they thought they were. The advisor world has done a great job of educating people that a 1% is a typical fee, and now he just learned that he has 4 times that amount. Mr. Jones, what do you think the stock market averages over the long haul? Let them answer. Make them answer the question. As long as they don't give you some crazy number, just go with it. Most of the time they're going to say something like 8 or 10%. 8% or so, I think, John. That's about right, Mr. Jones. But if the markets are going to average about 8% per year, and you're taking 4% of that out in fees to have the account manages, what type of net real return are you going to have after costs in your account? They do the basic math. Maybe 4% or so. Well, quite possibly, Mr. Jones. You have your principal at risk, you have a serious number of fees coming out of your portfolio that could potentially eat up to half of the gains of the market. Would you be open to seeing how we do business? That answer is almost always going to be yes. But to get to this point, you need to have a couple of things. First, you need to have a story. You need to get them thinking about what's going on in the markets in the path that they've been on to this point. And second, you need that data at your fingertips. If you have a good story and amazing data, you can have true amazing growth. Then once you have done the business, you need a system to document things appropriately so that in the future, you don't end up dealing with a crazy regulatory system that's going through changes. We're seeing many headlines, and SwitchSafe has developed a documentation system that keeps things documented to deal with the DOL and or whatever standard the SEC or states come up with if DOL is fully overturned. So there's 5 minutes for huge growth in 2018. If you'd like to see this process in action, simply click on the next attachment and there will be another 5 minutes taking you through this process with Mr. Jones using our actual system so you can see how the data works and the case is documented. I'll talk with you again in a minute. Hi, this is John for SwitchSafe. Thanks for tuning into part 2 of 5 minutes for huge growth in 2018. In our first part, we were talking to Mr. Jones and doing an interview to help him flip the switch on choosing us as his advisor on the first meeting. During that process, we had a conversation with him about his current financial stuff. And we said something like, Mr. Jones, tell me about a couple of those things that you currently have. And in that discussion, we found out that he had a mutual fund. He brought his statement, and let's say it's ARTMX, just as an example. We're going to add that as a current investment. And we talked to him about his Jackson National. We asked him, Mr. Jones, tell me about that Jackson National that you have. How much are they charging you? And he said, I don't know. I think about 1%, but I never really know. So we're going to pull up this Perspective 2 that he owns and put that as a current investment. Then I'm going to put in here just a couple other options just as discussion points. Let's use a real low-cost Vanguard fund that maybe you would have in some sort of managed account and add that a proposed. Maybe we would look at something like an indexed annuity, something again, very low cost. Add to comparison. And just as another example, I'm going to put in here, show you there's alternative investments as well. We're just going to leave that off at this point in time. So click here, run comparison. And Mr. Jones, let's take a look at it. I'm not quite sure what you are paying here in those accounts that you own. Takes just a second here, doing this on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, whatever you have in front of you at your meeting, and you say, well, Mr. Jones, you have this mutual fund here. It's 100% liquid, and let's see what it costs. It costs you 1.19% per year in that mutual fund. And you brought up to me this variable annuity. So let's take a look. Well, it was a Jackson National issued product. When you purchased it, it had a 7-year surrender charge, and here was the surrender charge. 10% free liquidity each year means that each year while you are under the surrender charge, you can get 10% out without paying any type of penalty. Here are some of the costs inside this contract. You have a base contract fee of 1.1% and an admin fee of 0.15, which brings you up to 1.25. Then from there you have sub-accounts that you put the investments actually in, and you have 99 choices of that. And they range in cost from 0.56 to 2.19%. Let's say by in the middle somewhere we say 1.5. So if we take 1.25 plus 1.5, we're now up to 2.75%. Now you have these living benefit riders, and the one that you picked up here has 1.2. So now we're at 2.75 plus 1.2, we're at 3.95%. And if you have a death benefit on here, we have additional expenses cost. If you'd like to take a look at the prospectus, we can click right here. It'll open the prospectus up for us to take a look at it. Mr. Jones said, "No, John, wow, I didn't realize that I was paying more than 1% in that." At this point in time, that is where this data is so valuable. Now they're looking at you to solve their problems, show them some options. And you say, would you be open to discussing the way that we do business? And of course, most of the time the answer is going to be yes. So here you can pivot. You can show any types of products that you work with. Oftentimes, if you're working in a fee-based relationship, you'll use very low-cost ETFs or mutual funds. In this case, you can show that when we work in our fee-based products, our expenses, our internal expenses, are as low as 0.04% versus the 1.19% that you're paying in your mutual fund and the close to 4% that you're paying in your annuity. We also, if you want to look at where the market's been at and take a little bit of the risk off the table, we can put you into certain types of products that protect your principal and still give you some sort of upside potential in the marketplace without having all of those 4% fees. And here's an example of that. Our index annuity. Click on the link, go directly to the fact sheet. So everything that you need to not only show them the expenses and what's involved with their existing investments, but any of the solutions that you may come up with and you like to work with are all available here at your fingertips while you have momentum, while you have flipped the switch and getting the client to do that buy-in. From there, we have our documentation system where these are fully customizable at each firm level. So these boxes are fully editable to whatever type of documentation you want for the transaction. You can have an unlimited number of tabs up here at the top. Down here, though, is where we go into specific questions that the DOL are trying to address. Now, I understand the DOL at this point in time has been overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court. But the SEC has already spoken about what their intentions are for coming up with some universal standards. And it's going to be something about doing the best interest for the client, or at least disclosing the compensation and or fees within an account and some sort of documentation of proving that what you're doing is in the client's best interest. So we actually have specific questions over here on the right hand side that we document, such as, does this meet their objectives? Does it meet an impartial conduct standard? Are you charging additional management fees on the account? Do you have conflicts of interest? Are you misleading statements to the customer? What questions were asked by the client? We're seeing these wave of arbitrations that come back with clients saying they don't understand that the product that they purchased. Well, at the time of sale, a client should understand that unless, in order to buy a product. So that's where we ask and document right here what questions were asked. They may be asked about a rider, or they asked about liquidity, or they asked about fees, or they asked about market risk, or whatever questions. We document those and ask if they're satisfied with the answers, of which then we can use either digital signature capabilities on your phone, tablet, or computer, or print off, use pen and ink. What materials were provided to a client? You've given them a prospectus, an illustration, a side-by-side fee comparison, whatever materials. Client can attach or a signature that they received those. What features of the product were discussed? Do you understand those features? Again, is this a rider? Is this a surrender charge, a participation rate, a cap rate, any of the fees, whatever it could be? Do they understand those features? Yes, they document that. What other products were considered? What else did you look at to choose that this was in their best interest? And how did you ultimately get to this final product that you selected. And then this is a very important box. This is our transaction notes, where we take about 3 minutes with the client to document how this whole transaction went down. And the reason we do this is because oftentimes a compliance officer will tell an advisor to have meeting notes and have something in a CRM to document how the transaction happened. The only problem is the client has never attested to that information. So if you ever get to an arbitration or a court of law, your meeting notes really are probably unadmissible because the client has never agreed to it. So that's just more of your side of the story. Whereas if we document it here and the client signs off on these transaction notes, now they've agreed to what happened during that transaction, and it's going to be a lot harder for the story to change, be it 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So here we position to the client, listen, we've gotten to this point, we've been through 3 or 4 meetings, we have decided, or you've decided, that you want to purchase X product. You've already signed the application for that. Here is where we need to document for our compliance staff how we got to this point. And you tell the whole story. They came to a seminar, or you got them as a referral, you went through a fact finder, you looked at what they had, you compared it to what their goals were, you found a gap, you filled the gap, you gave them options, you narrowed it down. Document that. You spend 3 or 4 minutes doing this good documentation here, and it can save $100,000 in legal fees in the future. These disclosures are all fully customizable at each firm level. We think we have some good ones, but obviously fully customizable. Down here at the bottom, places for signatures by the client, the rep, and also an OSJ. When you're finished completing the form, go up to the print button, save it as a PDF on your hard drive, add it into whatever processing system your firm uses, and you're good to go. Also can print it off on your computer. We do not store any of that data in our system. So this is exactly how, at the point of sale, at the time meeting with the client, we can show them what is going on inside their accounts, the fees, the costs, how it works, compare it to our way we do business to flip that switch, get their buy-in at the time of meeting. And this is the type of data that all of your advisors can have at their fingertips for $29 a month. Much less than any of these other databases that are out there, much more thorough and actually usable with the client at the time of sale. So I appreciate you turning in here to part number 2. I look forward to speaking with you and answering your questions in person as time permits. And thank you for taking the time to check out SwitchSafe. We look forward to great growth for you and your firm in 2018.